chaos there in the Romanian parliament and protests in the streets. I'm Femi Okay.
And I'm Malika Bilal. Today on the stream, Romania in crisis. Stay with us to find out why.
My name is Adrian Păcuraru and I'm student in Timișoara, the third biggest city of Romania. I suggested this story to the stream because I think that all world should know that on Tuesday in Romania, the penal code was changed by an emergency ordinances that redefined the abuse of power and conflict of interest.
Thieves, rats, cowards. That's what Romanian protesters are calling their government. They're enraged by emergency decrees passed late Tuesday, decriminalizing some corruption offenses and official abuse of power.
Critics like President Klaus Iohannis has limited power, but he says the ruling coalition enacted the measures to get their corrupt allies out of trouble.
În acest fel cum a procedat guvernul, nu se poate proceda într-un stat de drept. Or România este și vrea să rămână un stat de
The government tells a different story. It says the executive orders will ease overcrowded prisons by pardoning non-violent criminals like pregnant women and people over 60.
Romania's ruling coalition is led by the Social Democratic Party, which won elections in December, promising to create jobs and raise wages. Penal reform wasn't top of the agenda, and now critics say it will derail efforts to root out corruption in a country rife with it. Joining us to discuss all of this from Bucharest, we have Laurențiu Colintanianu. He's a journalist following the unfolding events. Taking a short break from protesting, Mihai Dragoș is president of the Romania Youth Council, and Radu Magdin is a political analyst who advised the former Social Democratic Prime Minister Victor Ponta, who resigned following mass anti-corruption protests 2 years ago. We also invited members of Romania's ruling coalition to join us, but they turned us down. Gentlemen, it's good to have you here. Laurențiu, you sent us this photograph here. I'm looking down on what from where?
You're looking down on so-called Victory Square, which is a square in central Bucharest. When you look at the picture on the right,
yeah,
that's the headquarters of the Romanian government, which at this hour is an empty building.
Sure.
But it is a symbol where people kind of throw their rage in the streets at. And the picture was taken like I think 45 minutes ago from a high rise that borders the square. At that point there were approximately 60 to 70,000 people in the streets. When we're talking now, well over 100,000 people in the center of Bucharest, and apparently well over 250,000 in the whole country, because there's protests going on in a large number of cities in Romania. I've actually seen a Facebook post recently that says people are going into the streets today or tonight in cities where they didn't go out to fight the former communist dictator Nicolae Ceausescu. So the Social Democratic government really managed in an obnoxiously short time of less than a month to piss off a whole lot of people.
Mihai, it's hard to imagine what it might be like to be right in the middle of that crowd. Describe the atmosphere and the mood.
Right now there's really a lot of rage. Initially, there were many days of protest before the decree was actually passed. Before, people were determined, but they weren't angry. Now they are really angry. They feel that there has been a great abuse and that the government took advantage of their prerogatives in order to clean their own records and their friends' records, and not to, actually provide anything of interest to society. Basically, what they did is that they said that abuse of power up to a certain limit, which is quite high, is no longer an offense. It's no longer a penal issue. It's just like you would say, okay, you can go on, cheat as much as you like. In case you get caught, you'll have to pay back the money, but the prosecutors can't charge you unless you have caused damage of more than 40,000 euros. And I have to say that some people don't earn 40,000 euros in 15 years of working in Romania, given our salaries here. So it's really a lot of money to say that it's not a criminal offense up to that amount.
And Mihai, of course, what you're describing is the anger people across the country feel. And you're in Bucharest, where we saw that picture a little bit earlier from Femi, but it's not just Bucharest. Take a look at these pictures. This is from Adrian, who you heard from earlier in a video comment, who pitched this show. This was midnight in the third most populous city where he lives. You can see people gathered there. There's also a picture of a sign. This is a photo after the government approved the modification of the criminal code. He says, "R.I.P. Justice, rest in peace, justice." So that's in another city, really showing how far afield these are. But I want to play a video comment from someone who was out there in the streets. This is Vlad, and this is why he told us he went out.
So last night, corruption legislation was passed in a secret meeting at 10 p.m. in Romania. First reaction is absolute shock, absolute disbelief. Everyone I know is absolutely outraged. It just doesn't seem real. It's mind-blowing that this could actually happen in 2017 in a European Union state. My mother called me last night and she said that she was afraid about me going out in the streets. At this point, I'm actually more afraid of what could happen if we don't get out there.
So Radu, some pretty strong words there, and this is what we are hearing from the majority of people on Twitter, but that can't be everyone in the country. How polarized do you think Romanian society is right now?
I think Romanian society is pretty polarized. And I think that polarization is not necessarily between left and right. I think it's between a lot of people who are watching constantly TV and people who are mostly online. So I would say more likely of a generational gap. If you're looking at Romanian TV, particularly at the 2-3 biggest televisions, I would say that if you're watching even tonight those TV shows, for them it's about political polarization. For them it's about somebody protesting in the streets who may be closer to the present camp and not somebody who's protesting for a principled approach and for rule of law. So the spinning is trying to polarize Romania in between the governing social democrats who have won recently elections and have managed to do some kind of a reverse Dale Carnegie, namely alienated people and made a lot of foes, not a lot of friends. So from this perspective, the political spinning tries to disconnect in a way Romania in between two parts. I would say this is in fact a principal fight. Even though I'm closer to the left wing, I think they made a huge strategy mistake. And I think this in terms of political strategy, but even like this on the merits. I mean, if you have an issue with some of the things dealing with the criminal code, or if you have an issue that has to do with how things are solved in the Romanian judicial system, start a debate and do it in parliament. You don't have to do it by night. You don't have to do it in government. First of all, because of course...
Radu, when you say you don't have to do it by night, just to remind our international audience, when this emergency decree was actually passed, what time was it passed, Romanian time?
It was yesterday evening, but we have quite a record in our political history the past few years of things which officially are not on the agenda of government or parliament, and then suddenly you hear around midnight or around 10 p.m., you hear that this has been adopted.
Does that automatically make it shady, Radu? Like, just because it's late at night, does it make it shady, or is it just because they had to stay up all day debating?
It brings about, exactly, it brings suspicion, because it's not about a day-long debate who has been prolonged into the night. It's about something which is coming up on the agenda last minute. And I think this is one of the basic problems. I don't think that people fear debate, and we should not fear debate, including one as regards what's the judicial system doing. But separate from that, I think that if we have earned something after 26, 27 years of transition after the revolution, we are already 10 years now in the EU, where we are 13, 14 years in NATO now. I think we should have the decency also in terms of political class to start an open debate on topics that can be or not of interest for society. So people are indeed...
I hear you there about that open debate. I just wanted, I want to jump in. Actually, go ahead, Mihai.
Yeah, thank you. You know what? Besides it being shady anyway, it has been even more shady because it was a topic of very high interest. There were tens of thousands of people already protesting these decrees as people knew they were coming up. And then the government didn't say when they would debate it. We just woke up, so to speak, at 10 o'clock in the evening that they have adopted them. And that has really caused a lot of outrage. And there was a debate, and people feel that debate was was a fake debate. It was a hoax, where the Minister of Justice came and said, come on, I'll listen to your opinions. Yes, of course, we are considering passing it through Parliament and normal debate and give it time. And they also used as a reason the fact that they wanted to free some space from jails because jails are overpopulated, but they didn't pass a pardon. They just passed decriminalization of abuse of power, for example. So, even the argument from which the whole issue started does not stand up as related to the decree that was actually passed. So it's quite obvious that they were not following what they said they were following. They needed to solve some problems they had, and then, what will be, will be. And people just feel that a bunch of very influential public officials have used the power that they have in order to solve personal issues. You know what they also did? In that decree, they said that abuse of power by issuing legislation and decrees is not abuse of power. So they decriminalized what they just did, the way they passed the decree, in case it would be considered an offense.
Mihai, let me just share this. Let me share this with our international audience, because I know you've been following this intently. The Justice Minister, Florin Iordache, he defended the decree earlier on today. Let me just play his defense to you. Have a listen to this.
Practic, prin această ordonanță de urgență, am făcut și am pus în concordanță deciziile Curții Constituționale care, repet, trebuiau să fie implementate fie de către Guvern, fie de către Parlament.
See here the government defense there. Christian on Twitter, though, not really buying it. Christian says the government decision was published in the official journal at 1:47 a.m. Such efficiency, and there's a little bit of criticism. There's some sarcasm right there in that tweet. Another person, though, this is Gabrielle, who pushes this forward a little bit. Gabrielle says this law will take effect 10 days from now. If massive protests happen, it will be possible to change the law. Lorenzo, do you think that that's actually accurate?
Well, there are some legal possibilities that can be explored right now. The emergency decrees have been contested by the Supreme Council of Judges and Prosecutors, but we'll just have to wait and see. The Ombudsman would be another option, but the Ombudsman of Romania is sadly enough controlled by Parliament and by the ruling Social Democratic Party. What I want to come back to is the argument that our Justice Minister gave today in his press conference. There is a bit of truth in that. But as we all know, in this age of alternative facts, I think it's our duty to debunk this stuff. So the Supreme Court of Romania, the Constitutional Court as we have it called, did say that the legislation defining official misconduct and abuse of power has to be redefined. But what the Constitutional Court did not say was save all your political buddies from going to jail. That's another issue altogether.
So,
okay?
Lorenzo, for the rest of us keeping up with Romanian politics, what happens today? Can prisoners be released today? Have prisoners already been released?
No, today no. So Mihai mentioned that the pardoning law has been sent to Parliament.
Yes.
Okay, and then that's going to be debated in Parliament, and it's okay that we have a debate on that. I'm not necessarily myself pro or against, because I don't really know the arguments beside the fact that the overcrowding of prisons is a blatant lie. But otherwise, pardoning someone is an act of clemency, and it should be debated, okay? How you do it and when you do it, it is up for debate in Parliament and society. The other part is going to take effect in 10 days when these emergency decrees, if not attacked and cancelled, will produce effects. And Radu mentioned also earlier, and I just want to bring this up into the conversation because he mentioned that it was a strategic mistake from the part of the Social Democrats. Today we have an unprecedented, really unprecedented call from 6 European and non-European countries, which are strategic partners of Romania, issued via their embassies, calling out for not basically destroying the fight against corruption in Romania. These 6 countries are the US, France, Germany, the Netherlands, Belgium, and Canada. We have no precedent in post-communist histories where 6 strategic allies of our country say, guys, what you're doing is really not okay. And for your international audience, I think in just 15 seconds, to put this all in context, imagine you have Donald Trump signing an executive order with no transparency whatsoever. People don't know when he's signing it and what it's going to do exactly, okay? Where he's pardoning, let's say, members of his cabinet because they are investigated for corruption. That's what we're dealing with at this point, okay? And imagine that the main beneficiary of that legislation would be Donald Trump himself.
Minika.
So you know, you bringing up the lack of transparency is what other people have picked up on. Also, there's criticism here. Christian points it out on Twitter. There's criticism here of the government acting unilaterally and not with the full public's view. Christian says many Facebook live streams have been popped up because mainstream media is sending mixed messages and political stances. Now, those Facebook live streams, one of them was taken by you, Mihai, at a government meeting that the aim of it was to make things more transparent.
I'm just gonna play a little bit of that. Have a look here on my laptop. Mihai, this is you behind the camera filming. Why did you have to go to Facebook Live to share this with Romanians?
Because televisions were not allowed to go in there with cameras. You know, so media was, initially the debate was supposed to happen with 50 people and no media. Then they said, okay, we'll take more people. And then they finally said, we'll take media but no cameras. And that's what they did. They did not allow cameras because they said they don't have enough space. Which is, you know, after having tens of thousands of people in the street, not having a proper room for the debate in order to have space for media and cameras is really, you know, something that is beyond normal, beyond the imagination in normal circumstances. So what we had to do, some of us, it was quite a bunch of us actually, we live streamed the debate and people could see what was going on, not necessarily from normal cameras and feeds from mainstream media, but from our phones. What I do have to say is that in the debate, people had mixed opinions, of course. There were a lot of people who had family members who would benefit from the pardons, or they would benefit themselves, or their bosses would benefit. So, of course, they would support the idea of having pardons. And also there were a lot of people totally against. About what Laurențiu was saying earlier, I have to mention that jails are overcrowded. That is true, but less overcrowded than they were in time. So now the overpopulation has decreased in time and seems to continue to do so. And we would have to look at a number of solutions. And instead of looking at solutions for having jails overcrowded, the Ministry of Justice simply put those two decrees and announced that, you know, they are the starting point, and let's see if you have any observations, and we might pass them through emergency decrees, or we might not, we'll see.
Okay.
But the idea is that it was not a proper debate on the problem.
See, I hear where you're coming from. Guess, I'm confused by this. I looked up a Guardian headline from a month ago. This is about your election results. Romania's Social Democrats easily win parliamentary elections. Easily win. I don't understand the subterfuge. I don't understand the actual story about this emergency ordinance had to be dug out secretly. When they already have a majority in parliament. Radu, is this anything to do with the communist background of Romania, or is this something different completely?
I wouldn't say this is necessarily an issue dealing with communist Romania. I think we've managed to, one of the achievements of the past 26 years is the fact that we've got rid of a lot of our communist or post-communist instincts. I think it's an issue that has to do more likely with the mentality of our political class. In fact, for our audience who may not know a lot of things in Romanian society, you may have heard in the 90s an operation called Mani Pulite in Italy that basically helped clean up the Italian political class, which is also viewed as very corrupt. Part of the prosecutors who were there were declared basically heroes. Part of them, unfortunately, also were lost in that political fight. Now, what's happening right now, I would say, for the past 1 year, is a comeback of politics against the DNA and against the anti-corruption prosecutor.
And the DNA is a special agency. Yeah, it's spread up. Exactly. It's set up especially just to root out corruption in Romania.
It's like a special unit, special unit of well-paid prosecutors who have been inquiring and investigating high-level corruption cases. They have been extremely efficient the past few years, and we have seen really high-level arrests and subsequently high-level condemnations. So if you imagine watching TV in Romania in the past 3-4 years, almost on a weekly basis, if not on a monthly basis, you would see a high-level arrest. Whether we're talking even former prime ministers or we're talking about ministers, state secretaries, mayors, and so on. So imagine this has caused huge frustration in the political class. And for the remaining politicians, particularly those who have issues as regards their own integrity, it's an issue of survival right now. And for a lot of them, it's an issue of the comeback of the system. It's like the empire strikes back. The problem is one of legitimacy and credibility. Because, for example, even if you look on the past few months, and you have seen one of the media moguls in Romania trying to attack the head of the anti-corruption prosecutors, she still has a lot of credibility, Mrs. Kövesi. And a lot of people sympathize, no matter the election result, and namely that the Social Democrats won, sympathize with the case of anti-corruption. It doesn't mean that they're willing to vote for a party just because that party is screaming anti-corruption. So they want more. They want you to promise something on the economy, like, for example, the Social Democrats promised and they won. So it's not enough to say that the others are more corrupt. The reason why you heard a lot of us in our previous discussions say that it was incredible what the PSD managed to do is that, like you read in that headline from The Guardian, they were so popular, 46%, and now they have a stable majority with another ally.
Radu, I think that exactly what you're saying is exactly why people online at least tell us they didn't go out and vote. We saw very low voter turnout records. Mona here is a journalist, and she put some context to all of this on Facebook. She says, our civil society is getting stronger, and these protests look like Romania's maturity test. She goes on to say a little example of this. Someone donated €5,000 for a small site called factual.ro that fact checks what politicians say in public statements. A group of young people, as another example, last night made a website called #resist, and it's a civil disobedience kit, as they called it. So, Lourențo, are these ways that civil society, people out on the street, are pushing back against what they see as corruption versus just going out to the polls and voting because they don't think that's a real option?
Yeah, voter turnout has been a problem over the last elections in Romania, with the exception of the last presidential election in the second round, where a lot of people came out. So I guess as a side effect of this whole incredible situation that the government has produced, it has really pushed civil society back together in a united front, saying, you cannot just govern as you please. And going back to the election results, Radu is right. They won in a landslide, you know? And then, for Christ's sake, why don't you use that landslide majority that you have? Because what people are feeling now is they're taking this as a personal offense, you know? It's like, okay, you won. We're glad or not glad that you won, but that doesn't really matter. That's democracy. Okay, now govern, but do it with respect to the people that you're supposed to govern.
Lourențo, do you see any similarities anywhere else in the world?
Well, I think Eastern Europe is a cradle of governments that kind of tend to ignore the voices of their people. Look at Poland. Look at Hungary.
Sure.
The Balkans are in a bit of a turmoil right now. Bulgaria is not a lot that different, you know. So yeah, and of course, look at Turkey for that matter.
All right, so Lourențo, Mihai and Radu, thank you very much for giving us some perspective into images that we showed you earlier, like this one that Lourențo showed us just before our show. Malika, just give us a sense of what's happening online around this conversation.
Well, people actually say that they are watching this, but are going to then join the protest after the show is over. And we want to see your pictures, #AJStream.
All right, thank you very much for being part of this program. We will continue our conversation at #AJStream. Take care, everybody.